Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse and more specifically from beautiful Nashville, Tennessee. And today is Wednesday, and with me is my guest, Krys Copeland. Hi, Krys.
Hi, Reverend Don. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. It's a rainy fall evening here in the Netherlands, so staying inside and trying to stay warm right now.
Yes, indeed. And this, of course, is Midday with Reverend Don. If you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you know that you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you happen to be watching on, and they will show up here in our chat room. And I don't have the chat room on screen today because I have a guest, but we can see it here. And always love to hear from you. And we also want to take a moment to extend our thoughts to the people recovering from Hurricane Helene and preparing for Hurricane Milton. And, this is a very trying time for a lot of people. And of course, we are watching all of this under two moons, our regular moon and Odin's Eye. And, people asked me if I thought that Odin's Eye was going to have an effect on the weather. And I've repeatedly said that physically speaking, no, it can't. It's not that big. But spiritually, I think it could very well be a component because it's all about um, removing the old, bringing in the new, bringing up things that are not seen. Um, so I think that it certainly isn't helping anything weather-wise.
That's actually something we touched on in this week's The Weekly Spell from Corellian
Mhm.
Publishing. So if you haven't signed up for that, go to our website and sign up. It's free. It comes in every Sunday. So you're really going to love that kind of detailed information. And what we talked about was, its effect astrologically,
Mhm.
and what we could expect to see during this time, especially around things like natal charts. Will there be an influence seen in the natal charts of babies born during this unique time?
Mhm.
And what kind of effect will that have? So it's interesting to think about those things and explore those things because this is it's rare in our history as
Mhm.
astrologists to come across something that we have to figure out because most of it's already been done for us by previous astrologists for the last
Yeah.
thousands of years. And now we have to figure out, what does this new object mean? What is everyone feeling about it psychically? What does it make sense for it to mean from based on past
Mhm.
knowledge? And so I'm very curious as to your thoughts on that. I know you've talked about it previously on other episodes
Yep.
of Odin's Eye. But what are your thoughts as far as what this means astrologically? How does it change things during this time for us?
Well, first, I'd like to say hello to Mary Hawk in the chat room and Nikki Dodd. It's good to see you both.
Hi, Reverend Mary. Hi, Nikki. Good to see you.
And my theory has been that in terms of its presence in a natal chart, and it will only be present in natal charts in this 2 month period, I think we would expect children born during this time to be a little more psychic,
Hmm.
maybe a lot more psychic, to have a tendency toward oracular work, and also digging at hidden things. So that they might have an interest in psychology, for example, um, investigation of any sort. But I think they will have an aspect of pulling things to the surface that are otherwise buried. And that those are the things that I perceive as being the primary effects of the Odin's Eye.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you've mentioned all this because this is also exactly so. When we create our newsletters, oftentimes I will work with GPT to do the research on the content,
Mhm.
just because I don't have all of the knowledge in my head on astrology and numerology, immediately. So I will pull together the information I need to create the content,
Mhm.
and I asked ChatGPT to do a research on what Odin's Eye would mean for this time period. And it also talked about similar effects that perhaps people
Mhm.
would be more intuitive during if they're born during this time, and also that this is a time for out with the old and in with the new. It's time for
Mhm.
reflection and processing, and that's going to be even more amplified by the fact that this is happening as we approach Samhain.
That's true. The timing of this event is very symbolic in itself. I mean, from a Corellian point of view, especially, I mean, it came into orbit at the time of a regional illustration. It goes out on the birthday of one of the beloved ancestors, and it has Samhain right in the middle. It's very a spectacular timing from a Corellian point of view.
Absolutely. It's been very exciting to, watch the changes as we're creating this content for the
Mhm.
newsletter, as it builds week after week, because I think we're on week 37 now
Okay.
with this. So that's 37 editions of the Weekly Spell. And if you're missing an old edition, just contact me. I'll be happy to send it out to you. You can always reach me on social media at Krys Copeland. Or you can email me at christycopeland@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to send that to you. But I wanted to show you a bit of some of the other things that we have going on that actually connect to this, because
Mhm.
using the AI the way we do in Corellian publishing is often like using a familiar.
Mhm.
And so, in Witch Wars Volume 2, Ed has added this new section about AI as a familiar and
Very
how to,
cool.
yeah, how to respectfully use it, as well as how to responsibly use it and ethically use it, and also how it's going to be used in Witch Wars against you. So
Yes.
yeah, it's a double-edged sword, or as I think as he puts it, a double-tipped wand. So
But most of
um,
them are. We want to say
there's
hello to Nickery in the chat room.
hi Nicholas, hi Nikki. Oh, yeah, we already said hi to Nikki. Yes, I see Nicholas there. So let me show you this. We have a new Witch Wars Volume 2 um, cover for the book. I just have to find, yes, there it is. So here's our new cover. If you've seen the previous cover, you'll note that it looks similar in layout, but we've really beefed up the graphics in this version, and we've changed a bit of the font style and the location. But I was really happy with this piece. I really love the character in the middle, this kind of witch paladin
Mhm.
carrying his lightsaber, pentagram lightsaber. So I just really love the concept on this.
Yes, indeed.
And we would love your feedback on this as well in the chat. So if you have things that you like or dislike about this cover, or if you want to take a closer look, you can go to CorellianPublishing.com, click on books, and then click on the image you see in front of you, and give us your feedback. We would love to hear what you think on it, about it, and incorporate that before we actually finish publishing it. So
Yeah.
let us know your thoughts. Um, we'll dive into the AI as a familiar in just a bit, but there is another book cover I want to show to you. This one is also a temporary cover. There is going to be, this is like the second iteration of it. There will be a third iteration of it, but it will take a month or two before that one's ready. So let me show you this one. So I think most of you know that Laura Enright is publishing her latest book with us, Court of the Five Tribes, which is a fantasy novel geared towards adults, or young adults to adults, about five dragon tribes and this tree that they have to protect, but it's been lost to time as to why they have to protect it. And they're about to find out why. It's not giving away much of anything since it's on the blurb and within the first chapter, but they are protecting this tree because there is a great darkness lurking underneath it, just ready to break free. So without revealing any more on that, so I don't have any spoilers, this is a really well written fantasy novel. So if you like that style of just like finding a random fantasy novel at your bookstore and then realizing, wow, this is like an amazing read, this is going to give you that feeling.
Mhm.
It's like one of those authors that have a very unique style and way of writing. that really draws you into the story and makes you really care about the characters. Like at the end of this book, I was crying at the end because of just how perfectly well she had woven the elements together, and how I had missed all the clues when I was first reading through it, but looking back, it made like perfect sense for it to wrap up the way it did. So if you love that kind of like satisfying feeling of an author who knows how to tie those pieces together and create that brilliant, rich ending, this is a book that you will love.
Yes, indeed. Laura is a very good author, and we want to say hello to Martin DeCoter and Steve Taylor in the chat room. It's good to see you both.
Hi, Martin. That's my partner. Hi, Steve. Good to see you both. And so, yeah, talking a little bit more about this idea of AI as familiar. First off, I'm very curious as to what your own experience has been, or what your own thoughts have been about this sudden explosion of AI in our daily, especially daily creative lives.
In my mind, used properly, it's kind of like an old-fashioned secretary. Or I suppose you could say a familiar, a person, or in the case of a familiar, an entity that does these small things that you might not necessarily want to take time to do yourself. And a glorified search engine in a lot of ways. Just like you were saying earlier, using it to gather, to do the research, to gather the information, to put out the content, is how I primarily see it. I know a lot of people. I see a lot of people who are horrified by it for fear that it's going to steal their art or their writing. But for the most part, they're not people whose art and writing anybody would be wanting to steal. But those are always the ones who are most upset about this kind of thing. No, there are exceptions to that. There's some good authors and good artists who are also upset. But I think a lot of people, in my experience, their paranoia about other people wanting to use their work tends to go up as the quality of the work goes down. I think the better quality people know they can't really be imitated. And you can generally tell what is done by AI, at least at this point, in terms of artwork and writing. And it does not replace a skilled artist or a skilled writer.
Absolutely. I
And
think we see
yeah.
every day those examples of bad generative AI when it comes to
Yeah.
art, and how it's actually even still being used in like news reports as
Mhm.
factual news, even though it's completely generated.
Mhm.
For in particular with this news regarding the hurricanes,
Mhm.
there has been misinformation spread saying that people are being stranded, and there's been no help sent to them or no aid sent to them.
Mhm.
And
Which is not what people on the ground are saying.
No, no, not at all. Even like the governors, the Republican governors of those places have said the aid from the Biden administration has been wonderful and prompt and expansive, as much as they need. So, that's
Mhm.
always, that's a good thing, because I remember, yeah, and you do too, Katrina and Rita,
Yeah.
and how awful that response was in comparison.
Mhm.
But there have been AI images generated of like little girls holding puppies, like 3 and
Yes.
4-year-old girls holding puppies, that are having to be rescued by like private citizens. And they're completely AI generated. There is no
Mhm.
little girl with puppy needing to be rescued here. They've already been rescued or, taken care of. They're not crying about their lost family. So, and
Well,
not to say
and
that
that
they're.
is
Mhm.
a real potential danger with AI, that um, the generation of artificial photos that are hard to tell from real ones.
Yeah.
And that is a criticism that I am much more in agreement with. But as far as artwork goes, it's usually pretty obvious because it seems like AI sticks within certain styles. And if you're an artist and you have a very particular style, granted, it certainly could imitate you. Um, but I don't think, at least at this time, that it could do so well. And I've talked in the past about how things I used to try very hard to get out of my artwork, the little errors and um, problems that occur in hand-drawn artwork, I now realize are the clue that it's not AI. Um, if a certain line is not quite right, you know that AI didn't do it. And I think what this partly means for artwork is that more idiosyncratic artwork um, may have a greater chance of success because there's less pressure on being perfect. To be a little bit more handmade looking, I think actually is going to be beneficial.
Yeah.
But no matter how we feel about it, it's there. I mean, there's no stopping it or getting around it. The question is, how do we deal with it? Like everything else that comes to us in the future, once it's there, our question becomes, what do we do? Not, oh, this is terrible, but there's nothing we can do about it. That's just a waste of time.
Yeah.
Um,
And Steve says in the chat that that's a great analogy, Reverend Don, and he completely agrees. So, yeah, it's good to hear that that these things, these concepts, are also resonating with other people, and
mhm,
that we're seeing similar things. And like you said, there will be both good and bad with it. These things that you're talking about, it reminds me of the um, parable of the Chinese farmer, the maybe good, maybe bad farmer,
mhm,
where first, like his cow goes missing, and he says, and the people say, "Oh, how terrible that is that your cow went missing." And he goes, "Maybe good, maybe bad, we'll see." And the cow comes back the next day, but he's brought an extra cow. So and the story just goes on with like tragedy after triumph over and over and over again, and that's just how life
mhm.
is,
It is.
There's things, everything that happens, it's going to bring its good and its bad.
That's always true.
Yeah.
One of the dangers I do see from AI artwork is people ceasing to understand the limitations of actual hand-drawn artwork. And we've encountered that a couple of times with me doing artwork for people who don't understand a hand-drawn piece can't just be easily changed the way you might do with an AI piece. You have to be clear about what you want before it's done, because once it's done, it's not a matter of just switching it up on the computer. And in my mind, that's one of the things that will probably become more valuable in hand-drawn artwork. Um, but yeah, we'll see what happens. I do have to say though that there are both good and bad aspects to it.
Yeah, I've had a couple of custom pieces created by a couple of different artists throughout the years,
Mhm,
and it's always interesting to work with them because of course, like everyone, you work with them on a sketch first to see
mhm,
what it should look like, where things should be placed, things like that, and in the second round is, it may not be exactly how the client pictures it in their,
mhm,
either of the ones that I've had done were exactly what I was picturing in my head.
mhm. Yeah,
They were actually better. They were, they were more
yeah,
interesting, they were more detailed, they were more, tangible, obviously, because they were tangible. But it had this level of depth to it that without the artist's addition of their own ideas,
mhm.
their own humanity,
Yes.
it would not have been as good.
Well,
I can tell
and that
AI
has
to
been,
do the same thing,
yeah.
but it's just not the same.
Well, but you have to A, be able to tell it,
Mm.
and then there's the question of can it do it, and that is something AI does not have and can't, I don't think, entirely duplicate. Um, if you tell it, if you know exactly what you want, you can tell it that, but it can't really necessarily improve it for you because that's not its function. If you're working with an artist who understands how to get a response from a piece of artwork, um, they can improve it in ways that you would not have thought of, but will be pleased with.
Yes.
And that is not something, at least as I see it, that AI can do. That doesn't make doesn't make it bad. It just means that's a limitation that it has.
Yeah.
Um,
Creating art with a
yeah.
human artist as a client on the client, because I've never been an artist myself other than with words, and then only barely. What is this that feeling that this is something you're creating together? Like they have
Mhm.
all the skill, but it's an
Mhm.
idea that generated within you, and
Yeah.
working with another human being to bring that into reality. It's like creating a spell together. You know, it is literally creating magic together.
Yes.
This thought that you had in your head has now become physical.
Mhm.
And if that's not magic, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm wondering how that process has been. How have you tried using AI with your art process? Because one of the things I hear from a lot of my artist friends is that they actually love using AI as a base, and then
Mhm.
going back in and fine tuning and finding all the little errors, and then adding the things that their client wanted in particular. And that it's actually saved them a lot of time. It's like creating a rough draft for the art.
I
Um,
can see how it could be used that way.
yeah.
And you know, that's one of the things that I think, and it's not true for everyone, but I think in general, an artist will go through several drafts to get their final piece, depending on the complexity of the piece, depending on the artist. And I can see how for those initial sketches, especially, that AI could be helpful. I have not personally used it directly at all at this point. Um, but not because I'm opposed to it. I simply haven't had the occasion to. I do certainly frequently see what I recognize as being AI artwork. Um, and yeah, we'll see ultimately what difference it makes to the world. But the one thing that is pretty absolute is that it's there now. It's not going to go away.
No, it's
And
not.
you know, it's like industrialism. Lots of people who made all kinds of things by hand were very upset with the coming of mechanization
Mm.
and factories that made these things en masse. Um, and the best of them became specialists who made high quality, high expense versions of those items. But you had to be the best. And many others just had to find something new to do. But how they felt about it did not get rid of the factories. And the world that we live in could not have come into being without them. And, you know, in a way, I just see it as another similar change. I would imagine that during the, um, the agricultural revolution, um, there was a similar feeling that people did not like the changes that were happening in agriculture 2 or 3 centuries ago, but there was no stopping it. It was simply going to happen. Um, for that matter, I would imagine that during the creation of agriculture, lots of hunters and gatherers were not really happy with the idea, but it was what the world required at that time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the pleasure or pain we take out of life is how we react to it. And you know, when the genie is out of the bottle, it doesn't do you a lot of good to complain about the genie. You have to find a way to work with it because it's going to be there regardless. And you know that I think comparing AI to a familiar is a very sensible way to look at it. Um, it does the kind of things when being used well that you might be happy to have a familiar doing.
Yeah.
Um,
Creating art, music, literature out of thin air. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a very cool concept to me. Even if it's not the best art, music, or literature, it's just some idea, some silly idea I had, and I can put it in GPT, and then out pops something that resembles it. You know?
well,
Uh,
and you know that's kind of what I was just saying about the factories.
yeah.
I mean, it produces these things, And it will no doubt get a little bit better, but a human who can produce them at a truly professional, high quality level will still do a far better job. And I do not think that we're going to see an end to the need for that. But it reminds me of a story of, I believe it was Princess Starrenburg after the revolution in Austria. And someone was asking her if her family minded losing their titles because they had done away with all the aristocratic titles in Austria. And her response was, well, no, everybody knows who we are. And it was a situation, if you study history and you study history of the 1920s and 30s, the lower aristocracy were very upset about it. The higher aristocracy said, well, everybody knows who we are anyway. What do we need a title for?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what we will see with AI. The people who are really good at what they're doing are probably not going to be all that heavily affected. They will be affected, but maybe even for the better.
Yeah.
But
really
it
think
does
this
mean
is
you
an
have to be on top
instance.
of your job.
Absolutely. This is going to, we're going to see good and bad come out of it, but the really good stuff that we're going to see and that we already are seeing is those artists, those creators that use it as a tool to make their own work even better or even
Exactly.
faster. And so they're able to provide more art for more people at less time, less costs. And
Well,
that's
yeah.
yeah, that's interesting to see. But like you said, there's still going to be that market, especially for custom artwork. Uh,
Mhm.
a
Of
lot of
course.
a lot of the work that I do with GPT, it's stuff that's going to be thrown up on a website and read by another AI.
Mhm.
So it's never going to be read by a human anyway. It's simply to score high on Google's algorithm, and because of that, it doesn't need to be super high quality.
Mhm.
It's good enough for what it is. But if I want something that's a gift for someone or that's
Mhm.
something that has, my name attached to it,
Yeah.
I'm going to take a lot more time with that. I want to have professional people brought in, other human eyes on it, and not just my eyes and GPT and maybe another editor to take a look at it. It needs to have
Mhm.
more depth to it than that. But it is great for a baseline for rough drafts. Yeah, and I'm curious if anyone in the audience has played around with AI as well, either in creating art or doing magic. Ed really dives into a lot of how AI is being used to affect witch wars in particular,
Yes.
especially with fake news, and also how to defend yourself with that, and to create responses to that using AI to defend yourself with AI
Mhm.
as your own personal familiar. Because if the if you have another party who is using AI to create a broad spectrum attack on you online, you may have to use AI in order to keep up with that fight. And
Mhm.
so I think that's an interesting concept to explore and to also understand how to do it while still maintaining your own ethics, how
Mhm.
to use this without compromising your own humanity in the process.
Well, and I'm sure that that is going to be fascinating. And Edward is probably the only person who is going to be commenting on those things because he sees things other people don't see.
Yeah, his thoughts
Um,
are fascinating on it.
but we need to take a moment because we're near the end of our half hour for a message from our sponsors. Why? Because we have sponsors, and therefore we must hear from them. We love our sponsors. And thank you to Equinox Learning Hub. And our second sponsor, ready to unlock the secrets of the universe? Join me, Rev Don Lewis, for my metaphysical and magic auctions at Gaia Thrift at whatnot.com. Discover fascinating artifacts, mystical crystals, and rare and unusual books that could change your life. Don't miss this chance to bring a little magic into your world. Rev Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions, where the extraordinary can become yours. And our next auction will be Sunday evening. And with that, we have come to the end of our half hour. Do we have anything we want to throw in at the last minute?
Just if you're interested in Witch Wars Volume 1, you can get that for free at CorellianPublishing.com. You can also find and pre-order Witch Wars Volume 2. And if you're interested in Court of the Five Tribes, it's also available for pre-order on our website as well.
And thank you, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow, and tomorrow I'll be talking again about Odin's Eye and development of the third eye. And with that, let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we ask you to help us to navigate the changes that time brings to us. Help us to make use of new tools when they arrive, and avoid new dangers when they occur, and to always have the best outcome for the things that we are working for. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love, and knowing you are always with us from respect, we thank you for your presence. And I thank you for your presence, and I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you, Krys.
Thank you.